Now still, even in 2020, one of the best reasons for owning a PlayStation over rival consoles is the PSVR, which boasts a seriously stacked catalogue of brilliantly immersive virtual reality games. Fancy a bit of engrossing adventure action starring cute little robots and creatures? Well, the PSVR definitely has you covered there. Or maybe you'd rather just blast someone's kidneys across the room with a shotgun, or have dinner with a bunch of horrible cannibals. Well, not a problem with this shiny helmet. So here's my personal roundup of the best PSVR games that you can play right now in 2020, and for more on the latest greatest tech and games, please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, one of the very best PSVR games right now is the gritty and ever so slightly violent Blood and Truth. The plot is pretty standard, involving a deadly feud between two gangster families, but that's more than made up for by the hyperactive gunplay. Dual-wielding pistols and machine guns while ripping through hordes of minions has never felt so immersive or satisfying. You'll find yourself ducking behind cover to avoid the showers of bullets flying your way, and you can even pick up grenades and hurl them back at the buggers who threw them. Blood and Truth is packed full of memorable set pieces, and there's even the odd opportunity to be quite stealthy, with a bit of lockpicking and sneaking about the place. Now I've got to admit, I usually really struggle to muster up any kind of enthusiasm for golf related shenanigans unless it involves windmills, pirate ships and a shed load of alcohol. But all of that changed the moment I stuck on my PSVR helmet and tried out a bit of Everybody's Golf VR. There are only 3 courses in total to blast through, and the game features are pretty straightforward, but for golfer novices like myself, the simple gameplay is definitely very welcome. Stepping into the dimpled sole shoes of your golfer makes the experience much more enjoyable overall, with your swings and putts expertly tracked by the Move controller and the PS4 camera. Just be careful that you don't tee off just as your mum is wandering by. My absolutely favourite PSVR game right now is undoubtedly Astrobot, something that I never expected to love half as much as I actually do. This is the perfect example of virtual reality being used to its full capabilities, with so many holy shit moments that I can't even mention them all. Astrobot would have been a perfectly fun and painfully cute platform game just in standard 2D, but this VR title transports you right into these vibrant worlds along with your charming robot compatriot, who you have complete control over. You'll find yourself ducking giant bullets and headbutting your way through the structures as you steer Astrobot to the very end of each level, all while actively seeking out secrets. There are 5 worlds to conquer, each with their own mega-sized end boss that absolutely towers over you. They're pretty bloody terrifying despite their cartoon appearance. And while the difficulty curve is softer than a fleece made of butter, that doesn't stop Astrobot from being tons of fun. And even when you do finish off the final boss, there's still a couple of dozen challenges to master and those final elusive bots to track down in each level. Great stuff. Now, anyone who reckons they have bowels of steel and aren't scared by nothing ever should definitely try out some Resident Evil 7 on PSVR. Play this first-person horror in virtual reality and it's guaranteed brown trousers time. Following the over-the-top antics and general tedium of the previous entry in the series, Resi VII takes things back to old-school horror, pitching you up against a supernatural gang of rednecks who want nothing more than to tear out your kidneys and use them as happy sacks. Getting up close and personal with them in VR is a memorable experience, and by that I mean it'll basically haunt your dreams until you wake up screaming in a puddle of what you can only hope is your own sweat. Right, definitely time for something a little less nasty. We all love a good rhythm game, and Beat Saber is one of the best and most energetic that we've played on any platform. Grasp those Move controllers and use them to smack the living daylights out of coloured boxes as they fly at your face, in time to a funky beat of course. Jaroslav Beck's soundtrack will get you jumping all about the place, as will those massive walls which come hurling at you to make things even more tricky. You'll definitely feel like a proper boss when you complete each song on hard difficulty, and it's just as much exercise as going outside in the real world, but with none of that annoying human interaction malarkey. Thumbs up. If you fancy playing a PSVR game with others online, one of the best multiplayer titles right now for the PSVR is Firewall 0 Hour. This strategic first-person shooter will definitely scratch the itch of any Rainbow Six fans who are after a tense and addictive experience. The setup is pretty simple. One team of 4 people must protect a laptop that's filled with super strength Dutch porno, while the other team of 4 has to nick it. Teamwork is essential for success of course, and each completed contract brings you much needed upgrades for future shindigs. Overall, it's very compelling, very addictive and very slickly presented. Speed junkies are also very well catered for by the PSVR, and one of our favourite races right now is Wipeout Omega. Anyone who's played a Wipeout game in the past, which has got to be pretty much everyone by now, will know exactly what to expect here. Incredible pace, stylish graphics and a pulse-pounding soundtrack as you take each corner at breakneck speed. Except now you really are in the cockpit.
or just outside if you choose the third person view instead. And like Resident Evil, Wipeout Omega is bound to make you ruin your undercrackers, but this time through pure joy and excitement rather than bowel-busting horror. You get 26 tracks, a few dozen vehicles, and plenty of game modes, all of which means strong replayability.
Fans of cute little puzzle adventures like Moss should definitely check out Ghost Giant on the PSVR as well. This rather relaxing experience puts you in the spectral shoes of an enormous apparition who decides one day to befriend a little cat boy thing. And when I say befriend, I basically mean creep up on and scare the living shit out of. But once the little cat dude gets over that slightly traumatic introduction, the two of you buddy up and go on sweet little adventures together. The cartoon world is beautifully realised, giving you the godlike ability to pull apart houses and other structures and spy on the inhabitants within. And while Ghost Giant doesn't exactly offer any challenging gameplay, it's certainly well worth diving into for a more chilled VR session. And if you haven't tried it yet, then Moss is definitely still a bloody brilliant little game that has you partnering up with a cute wee mouse thing who's tired of Nick and cheese and decides to go on a bit of a romp. There's a good bit of action to mix things up, and once again the presentation is spot on. And if that's a bit too much cuteness for you, then why not try cleansing your palate with a spot of Arizona sunshine? Yes, it is yet another zombie game, and yeah, it is pretty light on plot, but this first person adventure really makes you feel like you're lost in a desolate wilderness in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. Most of the time you'll be foraging for resources while putting those brain-munching bastards out of their misery. Capping an undead fiend from 30 yards with a super accurate headshot never gets old. Arizona Sunshine's puzzles are generally on the easy side. All you'll ever really need to do to progress is find a key or push a button, but the occasionally tense exploration and gritty action scenes make this a VR title well worth checking out. Or if it's a bit of clever puzzling that you're after on the PSVR, then I highly recommend the impressively original A Fisherman's Tale. This time around you're a wooden puppet who lives in a lighthouse, naturally, and who spends his spare time working on a small wooden replica of his homestead. But one day when you lift the roof off that model, you discover a tiny version of yourself living in there. And not just that, but your own home's actual roof appears to have lifted off as well, and now an enormous version of you appears to be looming overhead. Thus begins an absolute mindfuck of an adventure game where you have to pass items back and forth between your various incarnations to solve environmental puzzles. It's a work of pure genius, and getting through each chapter will seriously take some proper lateral thinking, as well as some thorough exploration and perhaps a healthy dose of illicit substances. Factor in the surprisingly emotional story and that slick presentation, and this is one of my favourite titles right now. And one of my favourite all-time PSVR games that will really get your blood pumping is the excellent Thumper, which has been around for quite a while but is still definitely well worth grabbing, especially if you see it on sale. This may look like some kind of weird action racing game hybrid, but Thumper is actually a rhythm title which has you dodging obstacles in time to the pounding beat. Those psychedelic visuals definitely match the heavy soundtrack perfectly, and it's a proper sensory overload at first until you really get into the groove. And if you're after a proper challenge, Thumper is very punishing but rewarding, and it's well worth grabbing. And last up, of course, I can't not mention Superhot VR, a simple but fun action game that has you running about the place killing everything in sight. It's kind of a sexy mashup of pistol whip and time stall. Everything moves at the same pace as you, meaning that you can stop at any time and carefully plan out your next move. Should I grab this guy's gun and blast him in the face, or maybe just take him down with a well-aimed pool ball right in the nads? The world is your oyster. And there you have it, my full personal roundup of my favourite PSVR games that you can play right now in 2020. There are still quite a few great PSVR titles due for release this year as well, so it'll be great to see what comes out, and I'll be sure to give you full roundup reviews as we go along as well. So for more on all of the PSVR shenanigans and etc, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers!